My name's Chris.
And I'm Christy.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the Washing Up Podcast. We are back.
Woo!
Woo! It's been a while. It's been, MasterChef. But
it's been, it feels like we've had a great
It's the longest hiatus.
Vacation, yeah.
It's the longest hiatus we've had
since we started
doing it.
I mean, we did do that Survivor podcast, but that wasn't the same.
No, that wasn't the same, although kudos Des.
Yes.
But anyway, so we are back with not the Great Australian Bake Off, because apparently the Great Australian Bake Off 2017
will be shown in 2018.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. On the plus side, though, that gives Liv one more year of reign, you know.
Does she get extra prize money?
I'd like to think so.
Does her column in, is it Taste, and keep going?
I hopefully they hurry up and, you know, put out things like Michelle's ads.
Maybe that's what they're waiting on.
Anyway, be that as it may, I think that we needed to start off with something we weren't sure 100% we were going to do.
No, we weren't.
I really wasn't.
No, I honestly thought, you know, if I catch an episode of it, so be it. And yeah, you know, like last year we may have yarred it, and watched it as it was being filmed in the UK. Well, not as it was being filmed, but as it was being released.
Yeah.
And this year we've kind of left it, and well, considering that they've pushed Bake Off to whenever, we were desperate, really.
We really did need a baking show. And so, I mean, the interesting part, and we talked about this at the grand finale, I can't even say last year, it's all blending in together now.
Yeah.
But it's when we did the finale of the last lot, and we talked about what was happening with British Bake Off.
Yeah.
And the idea of and I think Olivia was on the podcast and we talked about it. And we said, like Prue Leaf, like Noel Fielding, like Sandy Togsvig, but it just wasn't Bake Off. And so we were worried about that element.
Absolutely, but surprisingly,
it actually wasn't bad. Now, we'll talk about the show itself in terms of what happened, and then we'll have a chat overall about our views on the hosts and the judging. So we'll get into the start, and we start, of course, with the technical. Now, last year...
Well, no, we start with Sandy and Noel doing their opening sketch, which was a little sedate, and that came after we had like a vox pop from all the new people going,
and before all of that, they had them pretending to fly in a hot air balloon. Noel and Sandy pretended to fly in a hot air balloon.
There we go. So okay, so after all of that happened,
we get into the contest. Now, last year we began with sponges. Yes. And if the first challenge was basically 3 sets of make a sponge, make another sponge, make another sponge.
Yes.
And so I was sitting there going, okay, this is going to be interesting. What do we do to start us off this time? Are we doing mug cakes? Is that what we're going to start with?
3 kinds of mud cake.
No, I was thinking more mug. So
mug cake.
Literally, like, you know, we're going to just put everything in the coffee mug and put it in the microwave, and off you go. It's like getting a 6-year-old to do it.
Oh yes, I know.
But we didn't do that. Mm-hmm. We went with fruity
cakes.
Which is, I think they just wanted to hear Noel Fielding say
fruity cakes.
So
I wonder if that's what Paul gets called in the sack. Come here, fruity cakes.
But you want a Hollywood handshake? Oh, I feel dirty.
I mean, technically, it was a sponge challenge, but it was an actual challenge.
And I found it interesting that the number of people that decided to use apple.
Well, it's a British ingredient, apparently, even though one woman was talking about the Granny Smiths that she was using, which are an Australian.
They're very Australian.
Australian.
We had a few different challenge people using apples. The interesting one for me to start off with was Liam, who decided to make an apple crumble loaf. Now
we had that last year with what's he doing, a granola-based cake.
Doing the granola cake. That didn't work.
That didn't work.
But
you know, maybe it'll work on a loaf.
What I loved about his loaf was that, first of all, he said that he did it because his sister has a hatred of sweet things. So I'm going to make a sweet loaf. So obviously he hates his sister. So now that we've got out of the way that he's a family hater, he moved on, and when Paul Hollywood said to him, "Why are you doing this in a loaf?" his response was, "I like loaves." That was it.
I like loaves.
That was the whole justification.
I wonder if he's got like a t-shirt. I like loaves.
Yeah, and he didn't say loaves. He said loafs. So that was...
Do you mean loafers?
Maybe, possibly. And Prue sort of gave him a bit of a look. He was like, sure, good, whatever. Then we know that's not going to work, but walk away from it. Julia, who's courgette, you know, as in...
Julia's courgette cake. She forgot to de-rinse, or she forgot to squeeze the moisture out of it.
Yeah, she didn't take the moisture out of them, so it
Mind you, if I was
watery.
around Noel Fielding,
you were around Noel Fielding,
there wouldn't be a lot of...
No.
There'd be a perpetual...
There wouldn't be a dry eye in the house, so to speak. Anyway. So,
and by eye, I mean...
Anyway. Weekend in Amsterdam was what they were referring to her as, because that's where she got the inspiration from. And Weekend in Amsterdam. And I didn't think it was accidental that Noel Fielding was the one who read that out. I thought that was pretty accurate. A lot of coconut. Every time I see someone making a coconut cake, I think of Agnes Skinner on The Simpsons, and Bart goes to take you can have a picture of any cake you want, and when he reaches out, she slaps, not that one, that's a coconut cake. So every time I saw a coconut cake tonight, I just thought of Agnes Skinner. Peter made a coconut cake where he put coconut everything. There was coconut flour, there was coconut sugar, there was coconut oil, there was coconut, and his words were,
but you
can't get enough coconut, can you? And I went, yeah, you can.
But wasn't his the one that ended up tasting like bicarb?
Yep.
So much coconut.
So much coconut.
5 teaspoons of bicarb later.
Now, let's mention Chris. Chris is going to be a very interesting contestant for as long as he's in there, and I kind of think that won't be long.
He's kind of rocking a Karl Kruszelinski range of shirts.
He's very Dr. Karl Kruszelinski, yes. He feels very much like he should have a midday slot on Triple J explaining science to people.
Yeah, but his would be bad science.
His would be bad science because he decided to go with a tropical fresh fruit cake. And when Prue asked him about the ingredients, his response was, there's no butter, there's no margarine, there's no oil, there's 2 eggs. And Prue had this look on her face and went, you must have a whole lot of fruit in there. And it was a really disappointing tone. And Chris, rather excited, went, yes, after all, it's a fruitcake. And you just saw this look on Prue's face that read, this isn't going to work.
I wonder if he was actually going to make a fruit omelette. Because that's essentially what it is. Fruit and eggs.
He sort of did that for all 3 of his cakes. Like, all of them looked at one point like a fruit, or, well, the second challenge, which we'll get to in a minute, looked like diarrhea, but we'll come back. It was really fun to see the traditional things of Bake Off still being there.
Yes.
So you had the first round of people staring at ovens. You had the first person who forgot to turn the oven on. That was Yan. If Yan can bake apple and cinnamon cake, then I love Yan. I'm gonna say straight up, I love Yan. I think she's awesome.
Fuck yes.
The not turning the oven on, genius move. And everyone coming over and helping her to sort of turn the oven on.
Now, bitches, you'll think I'm shit.
The other one that I think we both love, Flo.
Oh my God, Aunt Flo. I'll have her around to visit every week of the month.
You'd be happy with a visit from Aunt Flo all the time.
Oh, if I had an Aunt Flo like that visiting.
What a visit.
Making me cakes, that'd be perfect.
I love her because she's from Liverpool. I mean, I love her because she's from Liverpool. I don't know if she supports the right team, but anyway. She made a triple layer citrus cake, and I love that her children left her instructions, and my favourite instruction on there was at the bottom where it said, cup of tea now.
That's so cute.
I loved it. I loved that her family was revving her up and sort of giving her all these instructions and decided to go with cup of tea now. Aww. Just to remind her to sort of settle and calm. That was nice. Tom decided to gold leaf a pear because...
Why the fuck not?
Why not? It's Bake Off, and if you're not going to gold leaf a pear on Bake Off, when are you going to gold leaf a pear?
Yeah.
Kate has potentially the greatest combination of jobs and hobbies in history.
I honestly thought when Prue turned around and said, I love the combination of, and she went on to describe the cake, I thought she was going to say blacksmithing and work health and safety.
If anyone needs to be an occupational health and safety work officer, it's probably an Abbott blacksmith.
But I just love how, now, she's got the looks of like Candace, right? But the tools at her discretion of Ian, where she's bringing in silicon moulds.
Did you make this at home? Yes, took quite a while. It does harken back to Ian, who's either growing all of his own produce, or I made my own cake stand and mould and everything else that I'm using here right now. I just went out in the back shed and knocked it up in half an hour.
I grew this wheat myself and ground it down with a milled stone.
I've been siding for weeks in preparation for this bake. Yes. She has elements of that. I did like the fact that before they mentioned that she was actually a blacksmith, they showed her doing her blacksmithing.
Yes.
But they said she's a health and safety officer, and I'm like,
she wasn't wearing any goggles.
That's a different sort of a health and safety work than we're used to in Australia.
I know.
Who goes to health and safety? I'm going to make something there. I'm going to hammer it out. It's going to be sharp, and I'm going to poke you with it and go, be safe. Yes. Be safe.
Don't die or else I'll kill you.
Yes, if you die, I'll kill you. Stephen, who made his bonfire night cake and began rather confidently by saying, I should have read the instructions. And they then cut back to Liam, who was trying to watch his cake cook and went, I shouldn't have gone with a loaf. Duh. Just duh.
Oh, Liam.
Oh, that was something else. We had the other introductions here, so we went back to James, who we sort of met early on, and then we met James when he didn't have a soggy bottom so much as a completely collapsed one.
His bottom fell off.
His bottom fell completely. When the bottom drops out, that's bad. And
just tucked it in.
But what was interesting about that was he was there for a period of time just sort of trying desperately to lift this cake up. And you could see the whole cake was collapsing on itself like it was like a portal to the other world. And it was just collapsing upon itself. And he was still vaguely trying to pick it up.
The hilarious thing with James, though, is as soon as they showed him up, I'm like, oh, this dude's an accountant or something. Lo and behold, he's in finance. But I love the quirky side of it. His dad's a rhubarb snatcher. Like, he goes around to other people's allotments stealing rhubarb.
Was he in the Great Australian Bake Off tent last year?
Oh, maybe he's related to Liv.
Rhubarb Gate, yeah. And Noel, so just before we get to Noel for a minute, just before the judging, Yan with one of the greatest lines I think in the history of Bake Off, of any Bake Off, where Liam is there trying to work out what he's going to do at the end, and Yan, all you hear is this voice going, "What you need, mate? You need some ice and sugar." She sounded like she was a dealer. And like just hovering outside the tent yelling in, "You need some ice and sugar? I got some good stuff. I got really good stuff outside here, mate.
I've got royal.
Oh, I got royal icing. So Noel did the first Noel thing of the show when they got to the first round of tasting.
Yes.
Which was eating a marigold. No one's going to eat a marigold. I mean, you say that with Noel Fielding standing right there and he goes, I will.
I was waiting for him to come in dressed in a poncho because there's nothing like a poncho.
It was a bit disappointing that he didn't. I was a bit disappointed that he didn't. Stephen got the first Hollywood handshake too.
He did.
There were 2 Hollywood handshakes.
I know. I think Stephen looked a little gel, but happy gel.
Oh, he was. I think that Stephen was just impressed that he happened to get one.
But what's the facey? The chick who got it. What's her name? It's not Sophie. Is it Sophie? Kylie? No. God, I don't know.
It's the first couple of episodes. We don't know your names unless you're going home.
But she cooked really well. She did the champagne bucket later on.
Oh yes,
she was excited.
Sophie,
she knew what a Hollywood handshake meant.
Oh yeah, she definitely knew what a Hollywood handshake. And you can see the big build up to her when the hand was coming out. It was like, give me a handshake. Prue then channeled Mary Berry when she looked at James's and referred to it as rustic.
Yes. Although I do miss an informal. It's one of those moments of what would Mary Berry do?
No, we're going to have a big segment later on where we talk all about what Mary Berry would do. And Yan gave me one other line that made me love her even more as a Liverpool Football Club fan.
Yes.
She said, "It's not pretty, but it would hit the spot. It's the Peter Beardsley of cakes." Now, Peter Beardsley, you have no idea who he is.
No, that flew straight over my head.
Yeah, he was a striker in the 1980s for Newcastle United and Liverpool.
Right.
And he was kind of renowned for having, like, false teeth that he took out and looked like he'd been dropped.
Oh, like
but
that.
He looked like a pie that had been dropped a couple of times, like Fee had taken him out of an oven and
like that really good-looking hockey player who then let himself go crazy.
We'll go, yeah, Brent Burns, yes.
Yes.
But the Peter Beardsley of cakes, you know, it's not pretty, but it hits the spot. It was kind of accurate. Then we got to the tech.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm sitting here thinking, it'd be a simple sponge. 12 chalk mini rolls. And I'm thinking, okay, that's sort of... And then when they went through what the actual process was, and when they sat down and Prue talked them through the process...
Yeah.
That's not easy at all.
No, and I'm like, she's there and she's like, I've got to make Mary Berry look like she was just giving them, like, kids' colouring in books to do.
Very much so.
And she's like, I've got even more to come.
You think you can rise up? I will strike you down. Enjoy the peppermint cream. But I liked the challenge because it seemed simple. I mean, one of them, I think it was James, turned around and said that I've made a Swiss roll. I just think there are a lot of little Swiss rolls. That can only end badly. It was good for me to see a challenge where egg white is so prominent so early.
Yes, except in Chris's cake.
We'll come to Chris in a minute. But I like the fact that you have... Because egg white setting never works. It never works. And so it's good to do it first up.
Yes.
Because it's good to get that out of the way. It's good to see who can get the peaks to stand and who can't. That's always fun. You know, it doesn't go badly at all for anybody.
No, not at all.
We'll talk about you in a minute, Chris. So I liked that challenge. I also liked the fact they said the curl had to be perfect. The cream was a peppermint cream. They gave them the option of not covering the bottom, which I liked the fact that they basically said to them, look, it's tricky first up. You don't have to cover a lot of it.
Yeah.
I liked that. Sandy Togsvig had a good line at this point. That was when Liam turned around and went, joking can only get me so far. And Sandy just went, thanks a lot. Chris, at this point, we need to talk about Chris. So...
So it looked like he shut himself.
Yeah, it looked like Chris had basically... There'd been some diarrhea and Chris had decided that he needed to cover it up by just putting it in a bowl and pretending he was whisking.
I don't know why my batter's so flat.
But his egg white didn't rise at all.
No.
Even slightly.
Rather flat white.
It was very flat. It was incredibly flat. Liam's, when Liam had finished his rolls, the way that I described it was it looked like Jackson Pollock had baked. It was like chocolate and then there were very wide flashes of white.
That said, when Yan was cutting hers up, it honestly looked like a very big dog had come and just laid some pipe. Three very long pieces of pipe.
You had that. You had the situation where Peter decided that who needs white chocolate? Let's go with brown because makes sense.
Look, brown chocolate matters, okay?
Brown chocolate matters?
Yeah.
All chocolate matters. Anyway, so he went with the brown chocolate rather than the white. Didn't quite work. The look wasn't quite there. Chris then tried to rescue the situation. It didn't go very well. It looked like what he'd actually done is like squashed some chocolate tubes and piped the runny mess inside it. And when it looked horrible. Not surprisingly, Chris was last in that challenge. The top three, Julia was third, James was second, and Kate was first. And Kate easily won that challenge. Hers looked exactly like Prue's.
Yeah. Maybe a little tiny bit less formal, but still.
But you can get away with that. That's the point. Which brings us to our first showstopper.
Dun, dun, dun.
And it was an illusion cake.
It was like Job from Arrested Development came out with a knife. Do-do-do-do.
What I was interested in with the illusion... It's magic, Michael. What I was interested in with the illusion cake is this challenge was a million times better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, absolutely.
The quality when they were talking about what they were going to do, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, good, you're going to make a sandwich. And it's going to look like a sandwich. Yep, it's going to look like a sandwich. And in my head, I've got Women's Weekly Cookbook. It looks like a cake that's sort of roughly sandwichy shaped with maybe a toothpick in the top to make it look like it. No. What Stephen, who did that, made was a sandwich. Mm-hmm. And it was exactly a sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
So you had Sophie made the champagne bottle and bucket cake. I can only assume an homage to Mary Berry.
And then an homage to Melon Sue with her initial moulding.
Yes, and the moulding, which we'll come back to in a minute, which was a Melon Sue tribute. So Sophie hitting all the good guidelines there. Yeah. Tom made a stack of books, which, as they said, would be filled with a couple of classics. I did wonder if that meant 1984. Apparently they were talking about classic flavours. I still think 84 would have done a good job there.
At least some Moby Dick.
When Liam was trying to work on what he was doing, the phrase "trust me" came up.
That goes well.
You started off the series by making a loaf.
Yep.
I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Chris decided to make what he called the raised pork pie and egg surprise. Now,
that cake batter.
Nothing Chris made before he baked it looked good. Nothing.
It looks like pate.
But off pate.
But like poor man's pate. Like Devon that had been like before Devon's created.
Devon pate.
It looks like Devon pate.
What, so aeroplane jelly set on top of it instead of the gel?
Yeah.
It's like aeroplane jelly and Devon. It's poor man's
blue
pate.
aeroplane jelly.
Oh. It probably would have been tastier than what Chris was cooking. Or that Chris goes, I understand that my flavours might have just got me over the line, but if you listen to what they said about fizz flavour, it was horrible.
And it was dense.
It was very dense, which was good because his last cake was runny. So if you aggregate them out, he probably had one good cake.
Exactly. Going by averages.
Yeah, if you go by averages, Chris probably actually had the perfect consistency for one cake.
Yes.
Don't know which one, but one of them. Now, Flo.
Oh, she's a wonderful woman.
Now, Flo made a watermelon cake.
She achieved what you could not.
Yeah. Now, I was having flashbacks. Now, to tell this story, I need to do something that Christy normally does. I need to tell a story about her family. So, we got last year, before her mother's birthday.
Yes.
We were preparing, working what we were doing for cake and stuff like that. And Christy was telling me about her mother and the watermelon cake.
Yes, my mum was making a healthy cake because my stepfather/uncle, that's another story for another time, he's got diabetes. So she made a watermelon cake, which is like literally a slice of watermelon with fruit stuck on top.
So I went, well, why don't I make an actual watermelon cake? I'll make a cake that looks like a watermelon.
It's like half a giant pea.
Now, the reason why the cake didn't work.
One alien butt cheek, really.
The reason why the cake didn't work.
It was like an alien's memory without the nipple.
You seem to have a very intricate knowledge of alien body parts.
Hey, you'd be surprised.
You know what you saw, Christy.
I know what I saw.
You know what you saw.
And I've seen the History Channel.
Exactly. The reason it didn't work was our oven broke in the middle of the bake. Now, I didn't know this at the time, and the thing didn't set. So the thing didn't set, and the outside of it set beautifully. And I've taken it out, and I'm like, it's still a bit. I don't know why it's a bit wobbly, and I've cut it, and it's just run everywhere. It was like a
fondant. It's like everyone on MasterChef.
And I used red velvet, so it was red velvet interior, and I had the green. I had the green outside, and I'd actually gone off and got the fondant, and I'd done the colouring, and it was green fondant around this red velvet cake.
I was waiting for the music from Psycho to play.
Yeah, by the end of it, it was very much like Psycho.
Did you?
And I was flashing back. Flo, on the other hand, made a cake that looked magnificent. That was a thing of beauty.
There was a park. She knocked that thing out of the park.
Yeah, you can't see it. It was gone. It looked that good. Yan. Yan should have won simply for calling her cake banana ramen.
I know. She's our Venus. She's our fire. The cake's desire.
And she not only did she make banana ramen, but with the katsu chicken fillet on top using corn flakes.
I know. It looked amazing. Oh, and the agar balls for caviar. Oh my gosh.
Julia made a Russian doll.
Now, Paul Hollywood was like, it's the fattest Russian doll ever. She's like, oh, it's from Serbia. I'm like, kudos to all those BBW Serbians out there.
Yeah, BBW Serbians unite. The thing was, realistically, there were only a couple that I thought didn't look brilliant, and there was only one I thought looked bad, which was Peter's. Although Chris's didn't look great. Stacey's was supposed to be a handbag, and I thought looked like someone had cut a Maltese dog in half.
It just looked like
a Maltese.
It did look like a Maltese, but like a goth chick had just gone, I'm just gonna do some black buttercream.
so it was a goth girl's Maltese dog.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Cod buttercream.
I'm convinced. I think, and I checked this up just before we started recording. Apparently, officially, Peter's was cheese on a cheese board. It looked like bread. It was cheese and bread on a cheese board. Apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, it looked horrible. Is the answer. Yan looked like hers looked like a work of art.
Oh my god! It was just, what did she call it? Surprisingly dry.
Yes, surprisingly dry. So it was probably the fact that the cake was dry that cost.
Oh no, that was
Yan's was also dry. They said. Yeah, they said everything looked great, but it was slightly dry.
It was surprisingly dry.
Stevens looked amazing. The sandwich looked incredible, and he easily deserved Star Baker. There was no question for me. And Peter going home, that's fair too. That was pretty accurate.
Yeah, he didn't quite get there, unfortunately.
It's the second year in a row that somebody who bakes for their church has gone home first.
Yeah.
Last year was Lee, and went home first with his, the priest, the vicar who couldn't cook.
That's right.
Who couldn't do a sponge. And this year it was Peter, who they did a big thing about Peter. And you should have known Peter was going home when he was the only one who really got the longer backstory.
You know what this is? Christian persecution.
Must be.
The ACL will be onto this.
The ACL will be chasing. So let's discuss, the elephant in the room. Let's discuss now the format.
Yes.
The format is exactly the same as it was. They haven't touched anything except for
Mary, Berry, Sue, and
Mel. Now, there were a couple of things. First of all, we'll talk about the host, and then we'll talk about Prue and Mary last. So,
okay.
Noel and Sandy were very subdued. They
were very restrained. You could tell they were holding back, which I think they've been instructed to do. And I think it's because they don't quite know the balance yet. It's like Mel and Sue knew the energy level to hit, and I know Sandy and Noel can chew up scenery.
Yep.
So,
I mean, the moment for me was when she was moulding the top of the wine bottle. When Sophie was moulding the top of the wine bottle and Noel Fielding is standing next to her while she's holding this chocolate phallic symbol. And he was very, very subdued. And I turned to you at one point and I just went, if that was Mel or Sue,
a field day, wouldn't you?
They would have just jumped all over it. If you remember last year where it was episode 4, which just became Smut Central.
Yes. But then again, he's finding his feet, and they're finding ground, and of course they're on a whole new channel now. I mean, they've got sponsors and stuff to worry about, I guess, like advertising, whereas on the BBC they wouldn't have had that.
No, exactly. So I think, but they can also get away with a little bit more on Channel 4. So that's a bit of a trade-off too.
Okay.
But you didn't really notice them. I think that was a good thing. I think that was clever.
There was one moment when Noel did sneak up from behind, and I'm like, oh, please do this more often. It's more you.
Yeah, look, and again, I don't think either of them were bad at all. I think they were actually really good. They did a really good job.
Yeah.
And
they were very good at doing the little bake-offy things. You're like, ready, steady, bake.
I've mastered that.
Yeah.
So now we need to talk about Prue. In all honesty,
yes,
she's wonderful.
She's wonderful.
But...
She's not Mary Berry.
She's not Mary Berry, and the chemistry with Paul Hollywood isn't
just not there.
And of course it's not going to be there because she hasn't worked with Paul as long as Mary Berry has.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, and it's both in her and Noel and Sandy as well, you can see that they're very aware of the shoes that they're stepping in to fill, and they're trying to, how can I put it, be a part of the brand, but bring some of themselves, and you know what I mean. Like
they've got a really difficult job because they've got to, on one hand, make the show their own, but at the same time, not vary from what works and what people expect and what people love.
Exactly. I mean, the thing, like in Australian Bake Off, for example, like Claire and Mel have got their shtick down pat, but they've got a bit of, how can I put, leeway because they're not replacing anyone. They're just doing the Australian version.
Because no one remembers Shane Jacobson because
no one wants
to. So
you can just go look at talented children.
But again, you know, the Claire and Mel are insanely talented and brilliant, and as are Noel and Sandy. Obviously, we love both of them.
Yeah.
But they've just moved into this, whereas you know Claire and Mel have been doing it.
Yeah,
and just as Mel and Sue had been doing it. And so it's a bit, and I feel for Prue Leaf a little bit coming into the situation she's come into because it's not easy. You know, who are you going to replace? You know, and again, in her own right, she's a wonderful, wonderful chef or one cook and you know, in her own way, cooking royalty, baking royalty.
Absolutely.
But she's not Mary Berry.
No, and the thing that just confused me a little bit more is that she's very Maggie Beer-like as well. So there was a bit of that. And, you know, I'm hoping to see as the episode progresses that the relationship between her and Paul progresses, that they're working.
Because she's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
She really is.
I think that, you know, it's just going to be time. Time will tell.
And we'll finish up with what would Mary Berry do? Now, I think Mary Berry would have insisted that Sophie throws some form of alcohol into the champagne bottle cake.
Exactly.
With a wink.
Precisely, because it's like this would have been a little bit better. Maybe you could have moistened it with a little bit of actual champagne.
Yes. Maybe you could have gone out there, you know, a little bit of bubbly. Wink.
Yes, perfect.
Would have been a little bit of bubbly. Wink. That would have been it. And then Paul would have said something like, "It's all yours, Mary." And then we would have been on. We would have been to the races. So that's probably what Mary Berry would have done this week. But I'd like to think that the champagne bottle was an homage. I don't think it was, but I'd like to think it was.
Yes.
And with that...
Oh, and she would have called What's His Cakes informal.
Oh, yes, she would have said they were informal. And that's the other thing too. So they would have been... Chris's cakes were very informal. They were so informal, if they were a vote, they wouldn't have counted. So... And with that...
Yes.
This has been episode 1 of the new series. I love being able to say that. Of the new series of not only the Great British Bake Off, but of the Washing Up. I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Christy.
And we will catch you all episode 2, Biscuits. Bye.
Ciao.